So for once, we're not only really talking about the UFC. In fact, we're not really talking about the UFC at all, besides maybe a possible juicing scandal with one of its biggest stars. But we'll end the pod with that because I think we have to begin with just how awesome the PFL pay-per-view ended up being. Obviously, we kind of talked a little bit about it to end the show last week, talking about Kayla Harrison and how she's one of the best female fighters around right now. And then upset of the century, upset of the year, possibly. There's a lot of contenders for that. I feel like I've been seeing like
Yeah, there's been a lot happening this year.
Yeah, because we got Edwards and Usman, Adesanya and Pereira, and now this. I don't know, man. This might be number one for me just because of the history.
Something about Ali, the Ali effect in a way. It just hasn't been his year.
Did you see? He tweeted apparently before the fight that if Kayla lost, he would leave MMA, and like now everybody's like, really? Like, is it true? Like, bye bye. But oh my god, yeah, I doubt that's true. Dude, he was probably sitting in the audience just in fucking total pain watching Kayla. Yeah. Well, it was a good fight though. It wasn't like she was getting her ass whooped the whole time.
Just dead on the inside once he heard the call.
Yeah, I don't understand. People were saying like, well, not a lot of people, I should say, but like enough that it made me like note it. That was like there were so many people that were mad at the decision, and I'm like, why? I feel like it was like a clear 3-2 personally. I don't know what you thought.
That's just kind of what comes with just such. I thought it was close. Yeah, I didn't think it was clear. I thought it was pretty close, especially that third round. Like that third round could have went either way, but no, it was super close. I enjoyed this fight a lot, but I still think the decision's fair. And it seemed, I think you could just see it like, Kayla Harrison clearly wasn't able to work that judo as much as she would have liked to, and that just kind of made all the difference. Like, it was they were both like slugging it out in there. It seemed like
even on the ground there was like a lot of crazy exchanges because like you were saying, like Kayla, I mean she did like a decent job with her wrestling. Clearly Pacheco got so much better at like defending her takedowns and having better like responses to them, because even in like round 2, I think it was the first takedown she attempted, she got caught in that guillotine real quick, and like the round kind of changed after that because then she stunned Kayla on the feet. It was a really good fight, and like with what you were saying about how it came down to round 3, I kind of agree with that. I personally gave it to Pacheco just because, we've had this conversation a million times because of the damage over grappling control. Because like Kayla was on top for like decent portion of the round, but she wasn't really doing much, and she was getting caught up in like triangles, arm bars, all these different submissions, and she was also getting her like just beat up from the bottom. And I don't know. I thought that gave the round to Pacheco, like if you ask me, and clearly I guess like the judges kind of agreed with that. But I don't, because we could really go into like so many different directions with this one. But I guess maybe if we want to start with Kayla, like what do you think of her now after this, and like where do you think she could really go from here? Because obviously losing in the final fight of your contract is never a good thing.
It's tough because, someone who kind of like, I don't want to say like hyped up, I mean, who hyped herself up as much as she did, like obviously prior to this fight and all that, it kind of puts her in a really like tough spot, to just lose the $1 million and the title like that. And then also something like, I guess this is it for her PFL career too. So now it's like
probably
now it's really where does she go from here? I saw something about in 2023 her wanting to, I guess, move down from a 155.
Really? I did not see. So she wants to, I'm assuming, go to 45.
Yeah.
That makes me think she wants to go to the UFC. Because maybe because did she say this like before or after the fight?
Said it before.
All right. Well, still either way. I mean, I know she wants like the Cyborg fight too, but now like that's kind of
that's
dead in the water. Yeah. Well, not dead in the water, but it's not as big as it would have been if she would have taken the opportunity like a couple of years ago, or even last year when like her contract was, I think, up too. Because I only think she signed like a 1-year deal with them, and obviously the UFC, their contracts are different. It's like fight contracts, so they get like 4 or 5 fights. But in the PFL, since they have like the season format, for anybody who doesn't know, they get basically contracts like athletes do, a couple seasons and stuff like that. But Kayla, I don't know. I still want to see the Cyborg fight just because I think it would be a fun one, and I'm curious to see, especially after this, because Pacheco did so well on the feet against Kayla. Like, who knows how Cyborg would do, because Cyborg is really good, and she has a lot of power in her hands, like Pacheco. And I was kind of like, I wouldn't say mad coming in, because like I kind of thought that Kayla was going to run through Pacheco just because she beat her twice. But I just didn't like the disrespect on Pacheco's name, because people always are calling Kayla a can crusher, and like I get that she's beaten some girls who probably don't really deserve to be in there with her, but Pacheco is not one of those people. Like, she's got really good grappling, as she showed in this fight. She made the right adjustments, was ready for what Kayla had to throw at her, and to think that like this is just like a fluke or like good luck is, I think that's just disrespectful to Larissa Pacheco, because I thought she just made the proper adjustments and showed why she's been so good all season. Because people forget, like, you know, the way that the PFL is set up, like the finishes you get and like what round it is, that affects your seeding in the season. And I think you have like 2 or 3 regular season fights, and Pacheco had first round knockouts in 5 consecutive fights, so she came into the finale as the 1 seed. Kayla was the 2 seed. But obviously their history leads you to believe that Kayla was going to win. But, man, just what an upset, honestly. Like, I'm happy for her. Like, that's even what I said on Instagram. Like, you know, we could talk about the fight ad nauseum like we kind of are right now. But at the end of the day, like, it's just really cool for Larissa Pacheco, because you think about it, she's the champ. She finally beat, like, her most challenging opponent, and now she's a millionaire. You know, she won that money, obviously, because the PFL champs all get $1 million at the end of the season, which is awesome. So, great win for her, honestly. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add just about, like, either the fight itself or either of the two ladies in it.
I mean, that's about it. Like, that's going to be really interesting to see where Kayla Harrison's path takes her. And these, like, I guess at the start of next year, so I'm looking forward to that.
My prediction's still Bellator. I just have a hunch. I don't know, because I feel like she's going to demand, like, a lot of money, and the UFC, you know how they are about being stingy, and especially now she's coming off a loss. They're going to say, well, now it's not as big of a fight with you and Nunes or any of them, but I don't know. I think there's still fights in either the PFL or Bellator for her. But on to the co-main event. We had Brendan Loughnane versus Bubba Jenkins in the 145-pound division, and this was obviously all these fights besides the Aspen Ladd fight in the main card were for titles, because that's how the PFL works. That's why I'm glad it was on pay-per-view. Like, I thought that was a good move by them. I thought it was a little expensive at $50, just because like they're not quite at the UFC's level yet, and to be like that close to them in price is kind of, I don't know. Like, I feel like if they would have lessened it a little bit, more people probably would have bought it. Like I told you, I bought it. I wanted to support the fighters, and plus, like, I don't know, the streams for any other event besides the UFC are kind of like ass sometimes, but I don't know. We'll talk about that another day, I guess. But I was so annoyed too at first with ESPN Plus, because I bought the pay-per-view, but it was like glitching. Like, it kept not letting me like start it up, and it was like, you still have to buy it. I'm like, no, I'm not buying it again. Like, are you kidding me? I already took the $50 out. Worst. I was so mad. I'm like, this is what pisses me off. And like, this isn't with just like, you know, the UFC. Obviously, this is the PFL now too. Like, what the hell? Like, this is ESPN's problem. Like, why am I buying a pay-per-view and it's like, nah. It's just so stupid. Like, this is why people stream it. Like, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, on to the fights themselves again, just because the fights lived up to the hype. But Brendan Loughnane had a absolute battle with Bubba Jenkins in the co-main event for the featherweight title. And, you know, it was like a slugfest for sure, but like the one thing that was really like sticking out to me the whole time was like how Loughnane was landing so many leg kicks. Yeah. And that matters because it limits mobility.
It seemed like Jenkins's hands versus Loughnane's leg kicks. You saw like Jenkins' shin was like that looked bad, like, you know, at a point. And then, like, it just seemed like Loughnane's confidence just kept going up and up and up, and then there you go. You get the finish, and yeah. Well deserved. Great fight.
His story is really interesting to me. Do you know, like, about, like, Brendan Loughnane's story?
No.
So in 2019, he fought on Dana White's Contender Series, and he won his fight handily.
Oh yeah, that's right. Now I have seen this.
And they didn't give him a contract.
They didn't give him the contract because he went for takedowns, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and I'm like, man, did they lose out on such a good fight? I mean, it's gonna happen. You know what I mean? I think Dana White's Contender Series is a bit kind of I don't know.
Flawed.
Yeah, because, like, this is why I kind of, like, call, like, bullshit on some of the things that Dana says sometimes, like when he's talking about, like, oh, you know, the head trauma is really getting to me nowadays, and then now you see he's doing power slap where people are getting knocked out cold. Like, it's just, you know, I get, like, what he's trying to do, and I'm sure it's not that he doesn't give a shit. I'm not saying that, because, you know, we saw the video of him after the Calvin Kattar fight with Holloway and how concerned he looked. Like, he's definitely, like, not a complete, like, asshole with it.
Yeah.
But to say that, like, he's all of a sudden, like, got a heart with it is, I don't know. Because, you know, you still want these guys on Dana White's Contender Series to kill each other, and that's why a fighter as good as Brendan Loughnane didn't get a contract in the UFC. And, like, I wish that this dude was in the 145-pound division in the UFC. But he's not. He's in the PFL. Now he's the champ. Won $1 million.
Yeah.
He's probably going to come back next year. And that division in the PFL is honestly pretty stacked, because besides, like, those two, I'm pretty sure, like, who else? They got Chris Wade, I know that. There's, there's just so many people. I don't even know, like, where to start. Pretty sure there's, what's the guy's name? He's a wrestler. This is going to kill me. I can't, like, not figure this out. I'm going to look up PFL featherweights. I need to know. He's Lance Palmer.
Yeah.
Lance Palmer. He's kind of like getting up there, I think, a little bit in age, but he's really good too. So that division's honestly really exciting to me. So we'll see how that goes next year. But then the heavyweights, dude. Did you see, I don't want to butcher this name, but I'm definitely gonna. So Ante Delija. He's the one who was Krokop's protege, if you remember. He's from, like, Croatia.
No.
He had a crazy first-round knockout in his fight to win the heavyweight title. It was like a dude, because there was so much stuff that happened on this card, and, like, really good, like, drawn-out fights, that this one kind of, like, slid under the radar.
So this was the fight that was just slugfest from the beginning.
Yeah, and he just straight knocked the guy out. Yep. Like, it was early. There wasn't really much to take from it.
What's it? How do you say his last name again?
You really just torturing me, aren't you? I don't know.
Because I recall hearing that I don't know if it was last year or not, but he actually lost out on the $1 million one time before, and now this year he's got it, so that's pretty cool.
Walking Trouble. Now that's a cool nickname.
Walking Trouble, yeah, we could call him that.
I like that, but let's see. Oh yeah, that's right. Last year he lost to Capelozzo, he's pretty good. He's lost to him a couple times, honestly.
Yeah. Cool.
The tournaments, like, we've talked about this before, like, we like that the PFL has done, like, a different thing with MMA and how it's promoted, but the season format that they have currently is just way too complicated to understand. I kind of get it. Because it's like, you know, you get a first-round knockout in the regular season, it's 6 points, second round's 5 points, vice versa, all that. But, like...
There's a whole point system, yeah.
But then it's hard to remember, like, who fought who, and then you get all these crazy rematches, and, like, you know, Kayla Harrison has fought Larissa Pacheco 3 times, and I'm like, now I gotta remember what happened in each of those fights. And if she comes back to the PFL, she might fight her again next year. So, like, with Delija, like, he's lost to Bruno Capelozzo twice now. But, like, it's so hard to follow. Like, they were both in 2021, so I think one of them was probably in the playoffs.
They fought twice in the same year.
Yeah, like, that's what happens sometimes. Like, it's so weird, like, the way that the bracket is set up. I don't know. I don't really know how they can improve it. Maybe we'll do that, because, like, in December, you know, when the UFC, we were just talking about it before the pod, like, once the UFC cards end for the, like, 2022, there's going to be, like, a few weeks.
Yeah.
Maybe we can make, like, a video or something, like, kind of what we would do if we ran the PFL, and maybe that'll be interesting to some people. But anyway, I think one other fight that was on there that I thought was awesome wasn't a title fight. The only one on the main card that wasn't a title fight, but it was a huge one.
This was a really good fight, actually.
Yeah, Aspen Ladd and Julia Budd. I thought it was a gritty fight, that's for sure. It was striker versus grappler, like to a T. Julia Budd obviously being the striker, Ladd being the grappler. Before we get into the fight, and I'll ask you like what you thought of it, because obviously I could tell that you were like into it. But is it just me, or did Aspen Ladd look so much healthier at 145?
She's definitely found her natural weight class now.
Yeah, and I think that she has like a bright future in the PFL. So that's cool. But for the fight itself, I mean, it was a hard one to score. Like I agreed with like the fact that it was a split decision, because I know I had trouble wondering. I kind of gave it to Ladd,
Me too.
but I could see the other side of it. But what did you think of the fight as a whole?
I thought, like, those overhands that Aspen Ladd was throwing, like, that was something. Like, wow, I hadn't seen something like that from her before. So, like, I felt like something like that was enough to give her the edge, but also it was just, man, it really was close. I mean, all the scrambling sequences and all that, it was a fun all around showing from both of them.
I enjoyed it, and she needed that, because her UFC run kind of ended so like roughly, and she just looked like really rejuvenated, probably just to have like a fresh start. And the PFL is really valuing her. I mean, like we just said, like all the fights on this card were title fights besides this one on the main card on pay-per-view. So that's really good for her, and I think that she'll definitely have a future in that division. Imagine like if Kayla Harrison does come back and she does come to 145 and her and Ladd fight. I don't think that'd be a great fight for Aspen Ladd, but it would be interesting. She's got like good grappling.
It would be interesting, yeah, I think so.
It's tough though, because Kayla's big, that's for sure.
Yeah, I just think Aspen Ladd looks so much more like well-rounded now.
I agree.
At this weight class.
I think the other thing too is like at 135, like when she fought there in the UFC, a lot of it was probably anxiety of having to make that cut, knowing that it's going to take everything out of you, and a lot of your training is more probably to lose weight than it is to prepare, and I think that's probably why her striking looked really good in this one. Hard. But anyway, there were 3 more title fights on this one, and honestly, we could really talk about any of them because they were all pretty interesting. Sadibou Sy, there wasn't really much with him with the welterweight title. I thought was kind of, he just picked his opponent apart, really, and he's done that like the whole season. He's a great striker. I mean, he beat Rory McDonald up pretty easy in the regular season, I think that was. And he's improving just dramatically every year, and I'm happy that he won the $1 million. It's so cool. Like, I love that that's like the prize at the end of it, that they get $1 million. Because it's like, like with taxes it's probably less, blah blah blah, but like it's still like generational like wealth, like if you do the right things with it. And I'm sure these fighters understand that, because a lot of them have families and stuff. So I was happy for Sadibou Sy, because he's a really good striker, and I'm happy that he won. But then we could go into either of these, because there was Robert Wilkinson just brutally just beating up Amari Akhmedov, and then there was also I'm gonna butcher this even though he's in the UFC, Olivier Aubin Mercier.
And Stevie Ray. I'm
going to go with OAM for all you guys listening.
That might have been my favorite fight of the night, honestly.
Yeah, I enjoyed that, dude. Because it was only like 2 rounds, but there was so much that happened in it. Because like the first round, OAM landed a lot of leg kicks. I thought he pretty much won that. But then in the second round, right when you think Stevie Ray is done, and I don't know about you, I'm pretty sure you agree with me, because we've talked about him like a million times on this show, like with the whole thing with he had with Pettis.
Yeah.
But Stevie Ray is awesome. Yeah. Like, I'm a fan. So, and obviously I remember OAM when he was in the UFC along with Stevie Ray. So that fact that they're fighting for a title in the PFL just shows that, they are really good. And round 2, Stevie Ray, who's an exceptional grappler, has got great jiu-jitsu, takes OAM's back. And that, I don't know about you, but I thought that the fight might have been over at that point. Like, what was going through your head at that point?
I thought, like, well, I will say, like, I didn't think the right hook that finished the fight was gonna finish the fight. I didn't think it was gonna land like that clean and just it just doesn't get any more perfect than that. Like, wow, like when I saw Stevie Ray hit the mat, I'm like, oh my god, like
right on
that,
the chin, dude. It was like perfect.
It's right on the button. So, I mean, credit to Mercier, like it seemed like he seemed like, I don't know if it was instinctual or like he was, he just saw the opening and just like something he was trying to set up the entire way through. But like you said, he had the leg kicks working for him, and that, I guess, that kept Stevie Ray honest. And then obviously Stevie Ray like trying to work his grappling, and then just like it was awesome. I really enjoyed that fight. So
yeah, I enjoyed it too. And OAM, like you were kind of pointing out like just now, his strategy, like, coming in was just really good, and I think that has a lot to do with Faraz Zahabi, who's his head coach, and obviously Faraz Zahabi, for those of you who don't know, George St. Pierre's head coach, Rory McDonald, just to name like a couple of them,
Just the Canadian beast.
Yeah, dude, he's got quite a squad up there in Canada, and now they have a PFL champion and a millionaire in Olivier Aubin Mercier. But then, in a way, I almost wish that, like, Omari Akhmedov wasn't so tough against Robert Wilkinson, dude, because he was just getting beat up bad, and it took so long to get to the finish. And Wilkinson, he kind of reminded me of like Pacheco in a way, like in the sense that he was just pressuring him the whole time, and his timing, dude, was amazing. The amount of times he was hitting him just clean on the chin, this was just as one-sided really as it could get, like pretty early on. And then, I mean, I don't know if you had anything really on this fight, because there's not really much to break down. It was just an ass whooping, pillar to post.
I kind of like, was like, oh my god, like, is the doctor gonna step in, the ref gonna step in? Like, man, like Wilkinson's getting beat up.
Or you mean Akhmedov?
Oh yeah, the way run, yeah.
I was honestly, because I knew like who Wilkinson was coming in, but I didn't really know as much about him. So like this one really like put me on to him, like, because he really did well in this fight. Just if he can fight like that next season, man, because that's another division 205 in the PFL that has like some good guys in it. So I'm honestly like really excited for next season, because there's so many fighters like who have now been signed to the PFL who haven't even fought yet or fought on this card. Because we were just talking about Aspen Ladd. We're about to get into a couple people who lost, but like still big names: Jeremy Stevens and Marlon Moraes, and then, Moraes was supposed to fight Shane Burgos. Like, that's still a debut that we're waiting on. I'm excited for next season of PFL, even though I think it's going to be on DAZN instead of ESPN, which I don't like, personally. But anyway, we can kind of get into those two fights that I just mentioned with Jeremy Stevens and Marlon Moraes. There's been, like, a lot of conversation about, like, what their future should look like. And, obviously me and you fucking talking on a mic aren't going to tell people when they should and should not retire. But it's rough to see like guys like that who were good for so long kind of getting just finished like this. Like Jeremy Stevens, I'll start with him. That one was rough. Like there was really no point in that fight where it looked like Jeremy was really going to like win. Honestly, like he was just getting mauled on the ground. He's very one-dimensional nowadays. I don't know. He used to have like a lot better of like a takedown defense and get-ups, but I don't know if it's just, because this is definitely not like a lack of energy, because he was talking before his fight about being like Jeffrey Dahmer, wanting to kill his opponent.
That's what it is. Like he actually is like, that's just it. He just wants to take whoever's head off.
Yeah.
Which like obviously,
out, they don't fucking
obviously
move.
We've seen like he's more than capable of doing, which is the scary thing of lining up against Jeremy Stevens. But
people forget he knocked out RDA at lightweight. Yeah, like that's crazy.
Mixed martial arts, like you gotta have, if you can find that balance between like, the ground and the feet, and then you'll be all right. But
it just seems like the grapplers that he's facing nowadays he seems like a lot slower too. That's what it is. And then I don't know about him, but like Marlon Moraes is another one. He definitely looked a lot better in this fight than he has in the UFC fights that he had in his career.
He got like a complete second win to him for like the majority of that fight, and then until he just didn't.
Yeah, and then like that's the tough part, because he looked like he had some juice and he looks like he has some left, but then you look at the stats and that's 5 straight TKO losses, and it's just like fuck, you don't really want to watch.
Especially when you lose like that, like your comeback and all, you have all this attention around you, and you're starting off so well, and then
and Shane Moraes is a good fighter too, but like it's just tough because you know how good Marlon was when he was at his peak. Like, you know, remember when he knocked out Aljo with that like half knee, half kick, and just put him on his face pretty much. That was a scary one.
Dude,
And
it's
amazing.
such a tough business, man, the fight game, because like you have like their opponents like Jeremy Stevens, like Marlon Moraes, like just the names alone, like you already know their opponents are like, yeah, like I want to be that one to just take these guys out of here that, you know, people are mainly
it's their
watching.
name
Exactly, yeah. And it's like, you know, like the name only like does so much. It's like, you know, it's just a different time. Like you have guys that are just, you know, I don't want to say hungrier because like obviously like, you know, all these guys have something to prove in some way, but yeah, like just
the old fighters are definitely fed to like the new and
exactly.
upcoming ones, and that's just how
tough.
the sport is.
It's really tough.
It's how it'll always be too. Like it's rough. Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I guess in the PFL you have more of a chance of like getting fairer matchups in the playoffs, but when you're getting beat in the regular season, it's kind of tough. But
yeah,
I don't know. I thought that was a great PFL event. Personally, like it stole the show. The week, remember, if you guys remember last week, we were planning on doing a spelling bee. So
yeah,
like,
if it wasn't like already on the map before, like it's definitely on the map now on the PFL. So
yeah, I hope they made some decent money with the pay-per-view. Let's see if there's any like numbers up about it. But yeah, probably definitely not. Who knows though? Doesn't really say anything yet. Just the prices and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe if we can find that out, we'll talk about it in another pod. But I guess before we go, we could talk about like the only story that's, well, there's actually a couple stories in the UFC. Maybe this is one that I didn't add to like the outline.
I did real quick before I did see something about, and that's why like, you know, we just have this, just such part of why we have such this like huge respect for Ariel Helwani and just what he does and whatnot. But like he was like talking about like not like necessarily like trying to like go people into like buying the pay-per-view, but he was trying to just like shedding the light on like fighter pay and just talking about how the PFL is like really doing something like really cool to like help that, like, you know, like obviously fighter pay is such a big conversation, so he's talking about like, you know, you got six fighters that are gonna win $1 million and just you know, there's just like that, just off that alone, like you see $1 million, like that's obviously a ginormous amount of money, like, you know, just so like the name gets out there even more. So like, yeah, it's like,
and that's life-changing money too. Like that's making the fighters have better camps now too, because they're gonna have more money to be able to spend on it. They have more money to support their families, and like, you know, we've talked a lot about the UFC fighter pay and stuff. And Ariel, like as great of a journalist as he is, you could tell that like he definitely has some bias because of how his relationship is with Dana White. But and it's so funny, like you talked about MMA journalism. There was this one guy who, he definitely was asking the questions to Dana, like a little smugly, but he was asking him and prodding him about the heavyweight title picture and actually challenging him. And the MMA media outlets that are like popular now, they were like making fun of that. And I'm like, you guys are making fun of this guy for doing his job. Like he's doing exactly what you guys should be doing. Like that's what a journalist does. They challenge you. Like Dana White's like kind of chuckling, and he's like, and you could tell like he's kind of like annoyed, but you could tell deep down he had like a respect for it. He's like, all right, he's like, this dude's asking, he's not afraid to ask these questions, and he had like information like to back, well, sort of, he definitely could have done a better job, but what I'm saying is like, we need more journalists that are gonna do that and like actually, you know, ask the real questions and don't just take no for an answer and like these random, because like with the, I think he asked about John Jones and all that, he's talking about Stipe, He's like, oh, yeah, well, you know, we're trying to get John Jones to fight in March. He's like, well, he was supposed to fight this month, and this month. So, like, which is it? Like, what? Like, that's what they should be asking. Like, all these other journalists are so afraid to ask him that. And there's, like, this misconception that if, like, you ask Dana the tough questions, you're going to get, like, your press pass revoked, like Ariel. But people forget Ariel got his pass revoked and given back to him within, like, the next day because they realized that that's a bad thing to do.
Or, like, this reporter for, like, some whatever stupid reason, like you just like afraid of just getting like made fun of, or like because Dana's might say something to you and then everybody...
and he was like screwing with him a little bit, but like you got to just get through. Like you can't if you're a real journalist, you're not gonna let like Dana White spin your narrative. Like you got to come in with actual numbers to back up what you're talking about. Like there's people who come up to Dana like talking about fighter pay, and then like they just don't prod him whatsoever. They don't have any numbers to back it up. They don't have any of these people who they're like. They'll be like, oh well, people are saying this. Well, who's people? Like that's not what a journalist is supposed to do. Like there's a reason why you don't see like the New York Times and all these other actual like bigger outlets at the UFC events like we do like MLB, NBA, NFL games and stuff like that. But not that the MMA media isn't good, because they definitely do a great job at like promoting fighters and telling like different stories. But I don't know. I mean, like there's always room for improvement in anything. So I'm sure that there's going to be more people who are going to get better. And I'm not shitting on everybody. Like there's some journalists for every one of these platforms that are good. But you know, we'll see if it ever improves.
Yeah. It's definitely something worth talking about though.
Yeah.
We
kind of want to be like a part of like the new age of that, like kind of just talking about it like it is, and not just giving you like
advocating more for the fighters.
Yeah, exactly. We want to tell their stories, talk about what they're putting into this and all the fights and what we think from our perspectives, just sitting here watching them on our couch.
Because like the John Jones situation, for instance, it's like you know, it's if the fight to make is Ngannou, then you know that's already like okay, that's a step up. That's a new division. That's a new division for John Jones for one. So he's already stepping into a title fight. Then you got Ngannou, who's got to prepare, recover for that as well.
He's
and
still
it's like
hurt,
exactly like, and you know obviously Dana's whole thing with Francis, like I don't know if that's gotten like any better. Like hopefully it has. Like
it's weird because it seems like their problems are only business related. Like everything I see and hear, they're they're on really good terms personally. Like they're actually pretty good friends.
And that would make sense. Exactly. Like this is your heavyweight champion, and now you have like one of the biggest straws like ever in the sport, like you know, threatening that title. Like this is like as big as a money fight as it gets. So like,
well, the latest update on it is that Dana was saying they want John versus Francis in March. Who knows if that'll actually happen, but that's what they want. But they said if Francis is injured still, then they want either, I think it was Curtis Blades or Cyril Gant to fight John. And I'm like, I'm here for that. Especially Curtis Blades. That'd be an awesome fight with him and John Jones.
I think I would rather see one of those guys first against John. Like see how John stacks against like an actual heavyweight first.
I will say this. I don't care how many years he's off. I don't think I will ever pick against John Jones until I see someone beat him. Even the Dominic Reyes fight, like you could argue that he won that fight, but it was so close.
Oh yeah, like two of like that's just always gonna be his division. Like he's the undisputed GOAT of that division. But
205 has had some problems lately with Jiri having to vacate his title. That
dude.
Sucked.
That's like the one division that just I think, and we've talked about it before, and like you can even more so now. And like obviously it's just so unfortunate with Jiri's injury. Like hopefully he heals up properly, and soon we can see him back.
I respect him vacating the title too, man. Not to hold up the division.
True champion for sure.
Because you can tell he knows what it means. Like I remember like when Khabib fought Poirier and it was like the champ versus champ, and he's like, this guy's not the champ. He's like, they're just saying he's the champ to promote the fight, and like that's just kind of how it is sometimes with that. Like I just think that I don't know, because you don't want like an interim title fight sometimes. Like it's kind of like with the featherweights, like we're talking about. Like Volkanovski's the champ. The person like Emmett or Yair Rodriguez who wins the interim title fight, they're the interim champion, but they're basically just the glorified number one contender. Like that's what it is. Other interim title fights maybe like matter a little more, like when there's a champion who's out for a while. But that's why I respect Jiri for stepping down, because he's like, well, who am I to say that I'm the champion when I'm not capable of defending my title? Because you know how that guy is. He's like a straight warrior, like all the way, samurai to the most like top extent, I guess. But I respect it. And then they kind of screwed Glover, which I didn't like.
Yeah, like they really did.
I get that you kind of have to have a main event in place there, but I don't know, like for Glover to be like your guy, like who's been there and like who was always accepting the tough fights,
Glover's just being like 100% like transparent. Like, you know, I'm ready to fight Blachowicz, but like Ankalaev, like this is like a whole like another ballgame that I simply need more time. And like no, like we need a fight for Las Vegas. So it's like all right.
And he's like,
like
I'm 40. He's like, I'm 43 years old, man. He's like, give me a break. He's like, I don't want to go in there and get like just slaughtered. And like, I still think that he'll be a threat to the title. I'm sure that the UFC is not going to completely bury him. I just don't think that they hate him like that, like they have
it's
other
more
people.
like they're like like the UFC is so high on Ankalaev at this point, like it's really no secret at all. So
I think it's mainly just like a business decision because you need a main event with championship like stakes, and Jan Blachowicz. And it's funny because you were talking about Ariel before. He even like reported, he's like, yeah, like all this happened when Jan Blachowicz was like on the plane on the way to Vegas, and
he didn't even
he got back and was like, oh, God, I'm for the title now. That's cool. Good for him. I mean, it's gonna be a fun fight between him and Ankalaev, but I got Ankalaev in that fight still.
Yeah.
I think he's the real deal, and hopefully we'll see a fight with him and Jiri at some point, or maybe even him and Glover.
But yeah, man, just like that division, dude, is just so much parity goes on. This changes like that. So and then we're gonna get another champion, and when's the fight happening again? March.
What? Which one?
Ankalaev and Blachowicz.
No, December. Like
March.
What were we talking? We were talking about something with March. I don't remember what. But yeah, no, that's
nice.
because they canceled the one, like because it was supposed to be Jiri versus Glover, and then they canceled it, and then they offered Glover, Ankalaev, and that's like when he was like, well, I need more. He wanted to fight him in January.
All right, yeah, that makes okay, yeah. Nice. Cool.
Then, speaking of comebacks in the UFC, Conor McGregor. There's been a lot of talk around him lately about his I guess, possible use of performance-enhancing drugs. We've seen him. He's been looking pretty jacked lately. I'm not ready to, like, straight accuse him of it, but he definitely has been saying some weird things about it lately.
Yeah, well, we're not in any place to accuse him of really anything, of course, but you have like other fighters themselves who are doing it already, like Anthony Smith, and I saw something about Cub Swanson.
Yeah, they were like kind of shitting on him about it. Well, basically, like for anybody who doesn't know, obviously he broke his leg against Dustin Poirier, but he hasn't been in the USADA testing pool. So right now, Conor McGregor is not being tested for any performance-enhancing drugs. And people have wondered, why is Chris Weidman having such a hard time, and Anderson Silva had such a hard time, and McGregor came back in such a short, he hasn't fought yet, but we've obviously seen him sparring and training, like he's pretty much like doing all right. It's definitely odd, but some people believe that maybe like if you're not gonna because he's coming back, he said that he was gonna be exempt from the 6-month USADA testing pool. That is definitely not the case, and USADA said as much. And he said, McGregor is not enrolled in our testing pool and would have to be for 6 months unless an exception is granted, which we do not think would be applicable, said Avery Walker, USADA Director of Communications. And that means he would not be getting a fight in February, but he would probably be able to enter the USADA testing pool, which means he would only be able to fight in, what is that? So 6 months, February, so probably August. And who knows what the landscape is going to look like at that point. But it's weird because he's been so cocky about like not being in the USADA testing pool. It makes me think two different things. Like one, that he really is doping and he just knows that he's going to be able to get away with it because of who he is. But the second thing, and this is honestly kind of where I'm leaning lately, because McGregor hasn't fought in so long and we know how he's an expert at promoting himself. This might all just be to promote. Like, he might just be blowing smoke to this rumor because he knows that people think it, and he's just taking advantage of that and saying all this stuff, I'm going to be exempt, I'm not, they know what I've been taking since day one, like, blah, blah, blah. It's just, I don't know. It's definitely a weird situation, but I don't think that they're going to have a repeat of Brock Lesnar at UFC 200 and have someone fight on all these different performance-enhancing drugs because that's just a lawsuit waiting to happen for whoever his opponent's going to be. But I don't know. It was a weird story. I thought it was definitely worth noting. But next week, December 3rd, we have UFC on ESPN 42, which is Stephen Thompson versus Kevin Holland, and I cannot wait for that fight. There is another one card on December 2nd. I might try and watch that. De Ridder, he's a good fighter. I think I want to say he's like the light heavyweight champ in one. Could be wrong about that. Like I said, I don't know. I never claim to know that much about the one athletes. All I know is that it's a great promotion, and I try to watch it when I can. But honestly, like December is filled with some like great cards. Like I'm looking on this on MMA Junkie right now. Even December 9th, like I can't wait for Bellator 289 with Stotts versus Sabatello at the bantamweight title on the line. Dude, that's gonna be like a great matchup because those guys hate each other. It seems like. But two really good wrestlers. So I'm going to be looking forward to that. It's going to be a fun December. And then, after December 17th, when the UFC's last event of the year is over, we'll see what happens. We'll see what we're going to get for you guys. But we got time before that. We got some fights to cover, and we'll be back next week to cover them. So we'll see you guys then.